Hello and welcome to episode number 9 of Heart Containers, a daily podcast where we discuss the latest Nintendo news every Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Rami Fawaz, and today is Thursday, February 7th. I hope you all had a wonderful Wednesday and congratulate yourselves because we finally made it to the second half of the week. Phew! And with that, there is a lot of stuff. Oh, okay. Not a lot of stuff to discuss with Nintendo related. It's actually been a pretty quiet week in general, and Wednesday was no different, but there were more news stories surrounding third parties yesterday than I figured we would hear about. A lot of positivity, some negativity, some stories about games definitely coming to the Switch, and others about ones that we don't know where they are. Is it even possible? Are they dead in the water? That's what we're going to be discussing today in the Daily Nintendo Report.
Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS. My body is ready.
We would like to play.
A way to make 3D games a reality. And it's called the Wii U Gamepad.
The first story on the report has to deal with Take-Two Interactive. The company recently reported their own third quarter financial results, and while doing so, made some very positive comments about the Switch's performance in 2018. In regards to their Civilization 6 port, which arrived on the Switch in November of last year, Take-Two stated that the game, quote, significantly exceeded expectations, end quote. They went on to pledge further support for the console by saying, quote, we felt good about the platform and we put the titles on Switch that we felt were going to perform well. We are also excited about continuing to support the Switch for the right kind of properties, end quote. So what I take away from this story mainly is that Take-Two, they're happy, obviously. They're happy about how sales have been going for some of the games that they release on the Switch at the very least, because they have released other games besides Civilization 6. I wrote a couple of them down. They include NBA 2K19, NBA 2K Playgrounds 2, LA Noire, Carnival Games. So they have had a somewhat of a variety going on with the Switch, but Civilization 6 seems to have really, broken ground for their bottom line. At least they are very pleased with it, and it makes a lot of sense because I think a game like Civilization 6 fits very well with what the Switch is going for as a platform. Civilization, of course, a franchise that is notorious for people getting hooked, people getting addicted to the gameplay, not in a negative way, but more so in a you start playing late at night and you just find yourself going on and on for hours because of how good that game is and how it keeps you on a string and lets you playing for a long period of time. And that is the type of experience that I believe excels on the Nintendo Switch. Why wouldn't you have an experience that begs to be played for hours and hours on end on a console that is so malleable? Like, it's so versatile that you can play it wherever you are. It is the perfect combination of the two. So it's no surprise to me that Civilization 6 is doing so well for Take-Two to the point where they feel like they are comfortable saying that they are glad to continue to support the Switch for the right kind of properties. That's what they said in the quote, the right kind of properties. And I think that's the standout phrase there, because to me that does not mean that we're immediately going to see Red Dead Redemption, Grand Theft Auto, Borderlands, like those types of franchise, which is their bread and butter, really. Like, that's what Take-Two is really known for, especially the Rockstar style games. I don't think they are convinced quite yet that the Switch is ready for those experiences. At the very least, the Switch will make financial sense for those experiences, and that's why we haven't seen those games making their way onto the Switch. Of course, Red Dead Redemption 2, that was never a game that was going to come on the Switch. It's just it would be, I would imagine, nearly impossible to take a game that was that technically far advanced and port it onto the Switch. But a game like Grand Theft Auto 5, that shouldn't have any problem making its way onto the Switch, especially if they decide to ignore the online capabilities of that game. But maybe Take-Two does not believe that those are the type of experiences that fit well on the Switch, and what they're saying here is that they're going to continue to look for games like Civilization 6 franchises and series that seem to fit really well with this hybrid portable Switch thing that Nintendo has going for them right now, and they are going to put more resources there. So take that from this story. At least that's what I take from this story. The next story I want to talk about in the report has to do with a press release from Ubisoft announcing that Assassin's Creed III Remastered is a real thing and it is arriving soon, but not for the Nintendo Switch like we originally thought. Or is it? Probably not. So I already mentioned some rumblings about this story in older episodes about how an Assassin's Creed 3 collection was rumored / leaked on multiple websites in January and also in December before that, about a game that was going to include both Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation combined in one port for the Nintendo Switch. And I think a lot of people, including myself, believe that that was legitimate, that there were reasons to believe that we could expect a game like this. I mean, not only is it more than technically feasible to expect those games to work on the Switch, but Ubisoft has had a pretty healthy relationship with Nintendo just this generation. It makes sense that they would try to do something like this that would be fairly low effort. I mean, I can't imagine that the port would be that hard to accomplish, especially because Assassin's Creed 3 was already on the Wii U, and it would also give them the opportunity to see if the Nintendo Switch audience responds to an experience like that. But instead, what we got was Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered for every other platform except for the Switch. Let me read part of the press release here so you guys get a clearer picture. It says, quote, Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered will launch on March 29th, reigniting Connor's revolution on Xbox One, PS4, and PC, featuring a new graphics engine along with enhancements that include higher resolution textures and support for 4K and HDR. The remastered edition also packs in improvements to Assassin's Creed 3's ergonomics and gameplay mechanics, end quote. So again, nothing relating to a Nintendo Switch, no confirmation that it's coming to the Switch, and no hint that there might be anything in the future with the Switch. It's kind of disheartening to look into this, especially because I believed so heavily that we would learn more about this. But I will say that it's not a mutually exclusive thing. I don't think it is. I don't think that this Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered coming to these other platforms is going to mean that a collection can't come to the Switch. Because remember, Liberation was already ported to other platforms and not Nintendo's platform. So it might make some sense to assume that Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered would be separate from a collection that would include Liberation and Assassin's Creed 3 in it, and they might be marketed and announced at two separate occasions, especially because this remastered version has things like 4KR or 4K support, 4KR, and HDR support, which you would totally think like that would not be something that would be in the Nintendo Switch port anyway. So they're probably two kind of different experiences, and maybe they're going on different paths. That's one way to think about it. Another way to think about it might be that they're just not doing that, that all of the leaks and the rumors were just that. They were just rumors that had no validity to them, even though they kind of looked convincing, and we were wrong, and I was wrong, that this is not a game that's coming out to the Nintendo Switch. And maybe Ubisoft is in a very similar boat to Take-Two, where they are on this kick and they believe that the Switch works really well for certain types of games and not all games. And so their mainline series, their Assassin's Creed franchise, is not a franchise that they believe will make financial sense for the Nintendo Switch. That could be the situation that we're in. And the last story that I wanted to get into has to deal with Kingdom Hearts 3. Kingdom Hearts, of course, a game that has been dominating not only mindshare but sales charts over the past few weeks, and it's hard not to feel envious as a Nintendo fan, wishing that it was some way possible to play this latest installment in the series on a Nintendo Switch. Well, at the very least, it seems like the Square Enix is not denying the possibility that it could be something that they are looking into. In an interview with Famitsu, Kingdom Hearts series director Tetsuya Nomura said that it was, quote, possible to release, end quote, Kingdom Hearts 3 on the Nintendo Switch, and continued further by saying, quote, other hardware is not limited to the Nintendo Switch, and we will consider all of them after the release of the PS4 and Xbox One versions, end quote. So there you have it, folks. Kingdom Hearts 3 confirmed Nintendo Switch. Expect to be buying this game in the very near future. There's absolutely no doubt. This is absolutely happening. Kingdom Hearts 3, mark your calendars. We're getting it. It's real. It's happening. All right. I'm exaggerating, obviously. This could mean a whole bunch of things. I do think it is curious why they would leave the door open as opposed to keeping it closed, because that is a funny thing about this. If I am in Square Enix's shoes and I'm like, do we know if Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to make its way on the Nintendo Switch? Is it even possible? I would say if there was even a hint that it would never be possible, that it would never come onto the Switch, even if they haven't even done the experimentation to find out if it was technically possible, I would immediately kind of go with my gut and say, hey, you should just say no. Like, why stoke the fire at all? Just say no, it's not going to happen. Close the door. Don't get people talking about this. And even if we do decide to bring it onto the Switch in some way in the future, then it can be a surprise. People aren't going to be upset about that. People are going to be happy that Kingdom Hearts 3 makes its way into the Switch. But to say something like this, to say, hey, it's possible to release, and that it's not only limited to Nintendo Switch, that they are actually thinking about other hardware, probably referencing mobile devices, because I don't know what other hardware they might be talking about, unless they're referencing maybe future next gen hardware. That, I guess that is true, they could be talking about that. But why leave the door open? To me, though, this kind of reads as something that hints towards a smaller experience about Kingdom Hearts 3 as opposed to the full-on port. And I'll explain that by saying Square Enix is kind of notorious for taking a lot of time, spending a lot of money and resources, and putting work into these games, and they don't necessarily recuperate all of the resources and money and time that they spent putting into it. I mean, look at Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts 3. Those are perfect examples of games where they just have such a long legacy and long history, and yet they make a lot of money, but not nearly enough money. And I think the way that Square Enix kind of goes around that is by porting, honestly. I mean, look at Final Fantasy 15. No, it didn't make its way onto the Switch, but they did a pocket version style thing with like a chibi art style that tried to take the core experience of Final Fantasy 15 and bring it onto other devices that could run it easier. And you got that game on not only mobile devices, but they did bring that version onto the Switch. And I'm sure it was a way to kind of bring that experience over and make some money without worrying about how they were going to technically port a game like that over. It's a way to elongate the lifespan of those games without trying to, again, one for one port the series over. And I would totally bet that that's something that they're thinking about doing with Kingdom Hearts 3, because Kingdom Hearts 3 is a monumental moment for the gaming industry. It is such a crazy development history and story about how long we've waited for this game. People literally bought PlayStation 3s in anticipation for Kingdom Hearts 3, and now they get Kingdom Hearts 3 at the end of the PlayStation 4's lifespan. I'm sure that Square Enix does not want the story to die down now. They don't want January, February of 2019 to be the beginning and the end of the hype for, not the hype, but like the news cycles and everything I'm talking about Kingdom Hearts 3. They want to keep that going, because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? And that probably means maybe supporting the game with DLC in some way. But if you're not going to do that, and even if you are going to do that as well, maybe having a moment in the future where you do have a pocket edition or some sort of port make its way to other devices, and push this game as much as humanly possible, milk it as much as you can, because why wouldn't you? That sounds like something Square Enix would do. I mean, look how often they port all of their games over to every single console. I mean, you can play Final Fantasy VII on your refrigerator at this point, I would imagine. It's everywhere. This seems exactly right up Square Enix's alley, and this is how I read these quotes by the series director. I read them as Kingdom Hearts 3 is not done. It's not going to finish here. There is going to be something to be said about Kingdom Hearts on the Nintendo Switch in the future, although I wouldn't place my money on it being a straight up port. Even though we have seen Kingdom Hearts games on Nintendo hardware before, specifically handheld hardware, but I just don't think that's going to happen. Again, for the same reasons that the first two companies that we talked about today are concerned about the Switch, that maybe they don't feel like they're going to get the financial payback that they might expect for putting all that work into doing a direct port, even though, this director guy says it's possible to release. So yeah, I do believe we might see like a pocket edition type thing coming in the near future. And that wraps up the report. And with that, we're going to get into my favorite part of the show, the question of the day. This question is inspired by the Reddit user TTime79, who pointed out yesterday that if Nintendo does not have a Direct this week, which in all intents and purposes it looks like they probably won't, we will be in the longest drought between main Directs since June to November of 2015. To add some levity to the situation, I thought we could focus today's question on some of the great things Nintendo Directs have brought us over the years. So the question of the day for Thursday, February 7th is, what is your all-time favorite moment or reveal from a Nintendo Direct? Maybe it was an entire Direct which wowed you from start to finish, or a singular game announcement that tipped the scales. Doesn't matter. I want to know what sticks in your mind when you think of the best Nintendo Direct moment, going back all the way to 2011 when Nintendo first began doing those things. I know that's actually really hard to believe that Nintendo has been doing this Direct thing for that long. I still kind of see it as a brand new way of communication for the company, but no, it's been a mainstay for the company for generations. I mean, they started this in the DS Wii era, at the tail end of that era, and it's been going on for this long. And sure, they've changed it up, they've experimented with how to do it, they've had various pacing in which they would do it every month or every few months. They've evolved the Nintendo Direct over the almost a decade it's been alive. But man, going back in time and trying to look at everything that we've gotten from Nintendo Directs in anticipation for this question has been quite a whirlwind, because I totally expected to be able to breeze through all of them and say like, okay, what's been announced since all the way back in 2011? But there's so many. They've done so much with this whole Nintendo Direct thing that I was really wowed by that. So I'm going to stick out a couple of my big moments, and I hope to hear from you guys about what you think. One of my big moments comes from November of 2015. In that Direct, they announced a few things that really were important to me, that really got me hyped. One of them was Twilight Princess HD. I mean, again, I've said that many times in the show. I am a big Zelda fan, and when they decided to do not only Wind Waker but Zelda HD on the Wii U, man, was that a special moment for me. And they also talked about Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow coming to the eShop on 3DS. Doesn't seem like that particularly big of a deal, but for me, it totally was. Pokemon Blue was actually the very first game that I owned. That was the game that brought me into the Nintendo ecosystem. It was the game that was wholly mine, the very first one. I've played games before that point, but that one was mine, so I have a special connection with it. And to bring it back for the first time and being able to play it on a modern piece of hardware is incredible, because before that point, it wasn't available on any virtual console service, and the only update that the game had was with Fire Red and Leaf Green, which was more of a remaster instead of the original thing. Not bad remasters, they were actually very good. I remember playing Leaf Green and having a grand old time with it, but having the pure nostalgia trip of going back with my DS and my 3DS and playing Pokemon Blue again was a real treat, and I was so hyped when they talked about that in November of 2015. And lastly, Cloud joining Smash. I mean, we just talked all this Final Fantasy talk. Cloud joining Smash was such a big deal. I mean, so many of the most hype Direct moments that we've had over the years have been Super Smash Brothers related and third-party characters coming to Smash. I mean, the Wii U version of Super Smash Bros., the 3DS and Wii U version of Smash, was, to me, the time period where Smash really broke out and attracted some major third-party players. I mean, there were some in the past, but this was a time period where I really felt like anything was possible, that they could say any name. And when Cloud got announced, that really lit the internet on fire. And Cloud Amiibo, and Cloud, like they said recently, is one of the most played characters in Smash Bros. Franchise, even up to Ultimate, is one of the highest played characters online. So there's no doubt that that's one of my most important Direct moments. So that entire Direct of November 2015. And I will mention in my second place or my first place, I can't really decide which one's better, that September of 2018 was a really, really big deal for me when it comes to Nintendo Directs. I mean, maybe it's just because it was recent and I kind of have, I don't know, maybe I'm biased just because it happened recently and I still have the feelings about how excited I was from that Direct. But I feel like it kind of set the tone for what the future, the second half or the second wave or era of the Nintendo Switch looks like, because it talked about Animal Crossing, a franchise that's near and dear to my heart, Luigi's Mansion 3, all the Final Fantasy games. We keep bringing up Final Fantasy, but that was the Direct where they announced 7 and 9 and 10 and 10-2 and 12 and many others. So the third-party support was stronger than ever. We got more details about Yoshi's Crafted World. They finally revealed Nintendo Switch Online in its entirety, what we were going to get. They talked about those really nifty NES wireless controllers. They brought in new Super Mario Bros. U into the fray. It was this really big moment, September 2018, where the future was mysterious and then it wasn't. Like 2019 all of a sudden became possibly one of the best years in Nintendo Switch's history because of really the groundwork that was set in this event. What did we know about 2019 really before the Nintendo Direct for September 2018? We knew about Pokemon, we knew about Metroid, maybe Bayonetta, maybe Yoshi, maybe Fire. Okay, I guess we knew a few things, but like it was still a whole bunch of question marks. And September 2018, in my opinion, was when it really filled those gaps and made a case for 2019 being a major player in Nintendo's history and potentially even competing with how big of a deal 2017 was with the fairy tale year that the Switch launch had in terms of games and hardware and everything. So those were my two big highlights, November 2015, September 2018. I want to know what your highlights are. So if you have a answer to this question, feel free to reach out to me in one of three ways. You can email the show in heartcontainerspodcast@gmail.com, or I'm on Twitter in two ways, actually. One is at HC Nintendo if you want to follow and talk to the actual podcast, the main podcast of the show, or if you care about me and you want to talk to me intimately or personally, feel free to reach me at Rome Fawaz on Twitter. And this has been Heart Containers, episode number 9 for Thursday, February 7th. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see y'all real soon.